What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for Bitcoin, but before I get into the charts I want to first go over some information regarding fundamental news. Here the first thing is going to be this article on CoinDesk, where you can see the title being Solana XRP jump as Trump reportedly mulls America first strategic crypto reserve, but experts suggest otherwise. Now this is generally going to be in relation to the information that was circulating concerning not just an American strategic reserve for Bitcoin, but potentially for altcoins, specifically the Made in America altcoins, because obviously that's a big part of Trump's campaign and his administration, being pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto in general, highly friendly, especially to those, as said, Made in America cryptocurrencies, those being Solana, XRP, Hedera, XYO, plenty of ones that I've talked about recently, go over on this channel. But specifically focusing here on Solana and XRP, also HBAR as well, but this article doesn't mention it for whatever reason. Those are three that have been really big in the news rotation in the last few weeks concerning Trump's upcoming administration, given that the inauguration is only around 6.5, 7 hours away at this point. But Solana XRP moved very nicely around. I know Solana was somewhere around like 60%. XRP may have been somewhere around the same, but Solana moved up to around $295. XRP moved up to, I believe, like $33.40, almost right on the dot. Now, the main portion of this article that I want to go over here is towards the end, subtitled is Not So Fast. We can see that it says, while some token holders might be salivating over the idea of the government buying cryptos other than Bitcoin, market observers raise concerns. This is a ridiculous idea and will never happen, Quinn Thompson, founder of hedge fund Lecker Capital, said in an X post. It's not the government's place to be making venture capital bets on altcoins, Thompson elaborated on CoinDesk, or to CoinDesk. This rumor of a strategic reserve for other non-Bitcoin coins is another example of where people are taking what otherwise is a bad idea and running with it as fact. Anthony Georgiades, general partner of investment firm Innovating Capital, said while it's extremely positive to promote US-based innovation, the potential nationalization of digital assets could weaken efforts to decentralize blockchain economies. As it stands today, there's truly only one token that is sufficiently and purely decentralized, and that is Bitcoin, he said in an interview on the CoinDesk Markets Daily Show. These other projects all have the foundational strengths and ability towards a path to that level of decentralized ethos. This nationalization of digital assets might potentially weaken these efforts over time. And I think these are some good concerns to bring into the conversation here concerning not just the American Strategic Reserve for Bitcoin, which obviously I would say generally, if not everybody, agrees that that is a good idea, and also just good for the longer term and broad adoption of Bitcoin and its integration into society as a store of value and the many other use case implications which it could act for now with its current technology, and even potentially in the future with additions that might be made to its blockchain to make it a little bit more applicable, such as adding layers on top of it that don't disrespect what Bitcoin is and its fundamental essence. But when it comes to the concerns brought up here of the nationalization of digital assets, I think that is, again, something important to note. As he did say, Anthony Georgiades, that it could weaken efforts to decentralize blockchain economies. I mean, really, when it comes to these altcoin strategic reserves, again, especially when it comes to this is obviously revolving around politics and the upcoming president. With a lot of the times what politicians say, much of it doesn't actually come to fruition. A lot of the times they, are partially telling the truth and where they stand and what their, regulatory orientation or the personal beliefs may be in the first place, or they might just be straight up lying as well in order to gain votes, which will actually be a relevant aspect of the next article I'm going to be going over. But overall, in general, I think obviously this is going to be nothing but good, especially specifically when it comes to the Bitcoin strategic reserve, especially when it comes to helping with, overall the economy, the continuation of the economic and financial prosperity of America as a nation, as in a collective country itself. Now here is this article from DL News with the title being Trump's in the White House, can he fulfill these 8 crypto promises? Now this is really going to kind of set, again, as roughly 6.5 hours, 7 hours away from the inauguration ceremony. This is going to be going over, as it said, I'm not sure if these are all of the ones that he has mentioned over the last number of months and during his campaign leading into his the election and the upcoming inauguration ceremony and his swearing in as president. But these are at least, most of them I would assume, and if not, more likely than not, the most important ones, the most crucial ones that have been brought up. But it's going to be very crucial that for the blockchain space, for those interested and invested in Bitcoin and altcoins, that a lot of these promises, or these, especially the promises, because of the whole nature and principle of what a promise is, but these statements that he's made concerning regulation, sentiments that he has spoken about in accordance to what he wants to do with crypto, especially within America, making it the global crypto capital, really the crypto powerhouse, standing at the top of the hill as the king of the hill for crypto when it comes to, again, the globe and competition with other nations such as China or Russia or wherever else. Now, before we get into those 8 promises, there are a few points that the article mentions that I want to go over. Here it says, industry talking heads have extolled the election results as a preamble of the golden age of crypto. They bank on the hope that Trump will deliver on his trove of pro-crypto campaign promises. We can expect more defined regulatory frameworks and a greater willingness from some to collaborate with the crypto sector. Rebecca Rettig, Chief Legal and Policy Officer at Polygon Labs, told DL News in November. However, legal experts and industry watchers tell DL News that they doubt Trump will keep his word. I don't think Trump believes in crypto or even is interested in crypto. David Yermak, a finance professor at Leonard N. Stern School of Business who teaches courses on corporate law and cryptocurrencies, told DL News in November. And now, just to stop and put some input in on that, I think that's not a totally absurd and asinine statement, but I think it is quite a peculiar one and a more likely than not inaccurate one to say that he doesn't believe in crypto. Or is interested in it whatsoever. I find quite odd. Now, obviously, this whole crypto campaign could have just be for, as it says here, the article goes on to say he was interested in getting libertarian support, and now that the election's over, his commitment to this is probably going to be pretty quickly forgotten as soon as there's trouble. I mean, again, that could be correct. Although I would vouch for the argument that he does. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that he understands blockchain solutions and their technical intricacies as obviously getting down into the nitty gritty in the sense that a white paper for a protocol would get into. I think he, as a businessman, sees the kind of superficial or just, a few inches deep into the water that is the cryptocurrency space, the implications associated with that, what it means for society when it comes to, intercontinental peer-to-peer financial, economic transactions, or within nation states such as America, so on and so forth, and the evolutions to sectors such as the logistics sector, the medical sector, even in politics with elections and the blockchain solutions that, such as XYO being a DPIN and an Oracle related solution, could help, amongst the many of other blockchain solutions that could help in validating the integrity and the truthfulness of elections when it comes to, even location data, obviously making sure that the way that especially if the electronic systems that people are voting on or how the ballots are being counted, all of the, specifics when it comes to that are being maintained in a honest, truthful, and integral manner. So I think that's quite a odd and peculiar take. That's not the most likely scenario when it comes to Donald Trump and where he stands. Although, again, at the end of the day, that could definitely be the case, especially because, again, this all revolves around politics. And even though Trump isn't a career politician, he still is nonetheless operating as a politician necessarily, due to the fact that he is soon to be president for his second term. He's already been president for a term, so he's clearly, in a sense, already a quote-unquote politician at this point. With Trump's inauguration today, the industry is looking for signs that he'll keep his promises. He's promised to sign a blizzard of executive orders on day one of his presidency. However, analysts warn that a failure to deliver on his crypto promises could drag Bitcoin down to 80,000. Now, from my news sources, I've heard that he wants to sign up to, if not right on the dot, 100 executive orders in day one. Now, actually, in the celebration rally that he had yesterday, he said that he's going to be signing so many executive orders that his wrist is going to become tired. I'm moving down into these 8 points, really the main point of this article. The first one being freeing Ross Ulbricht. Trump has promised to free Silk Road operator Ross Ulbricht from prison. Ulbricht was sentenced to life in prison in 2015. He was convicted of creating and operating Silk Road, a darknet marketplace where criminals traded over $200 million worth of illegal drugs and other activities using cryptocurrencies. For some, Ulbricht was a crypto pioneer. For others, Ulbricht is simply a criminal with blood on his hands. Bettors on crypto gambling site Polymarket gave it an 84% chance that Ulbricht will be pardoned in Trump's 100 first days. Now, at this point, I don't think is really that big of a deal. It might be for some people, but this really doesn't. This is more of like a pop culture promise. It doesn't really have much to do, and I think will have little, if not no, impact on the further proliferative success of Bitcoin, altcoins, and blockchain solutions in general, and the overall positive, friendly sentiment regarding regulation within America over the next 4 years, and hopefully, best case scenario, longer than the next 4 years. Second one being to fire Gensler. Securities and Exchange Chair Gary Gensler made himself unpopular among crypto pundits by spearheading a crackdown that saw the regulator file lawsuits against industry players like Ripple, Kraken, and Coinbase. Following the election, the SEC boss took the decision out of Trump's hands when he volunteered to quit on January 20th. This is a good one. Clearly there, as it said, he has already claimed, or he made the decision to step down and quit when Trump is sworn in during the inauguration, which is going to be a great thing. Obviously, Gary Gensler, I'm sure most of you are probably already aware, maybe not, but he, just to put it simply, not friendly, is doing terrible things like many of the other political authorities during the Biden administration were doing during the last 4 years. Third here, Bitcoin National Reserve. Trump has promised to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. In July, Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis introduced the Bitcoin Act of 2024 to establish a reserve that holds 200,000 Bitcoins worth $2.1 billion in today's prices. After Trump won, he then said, "We are going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve." Now, this is probably, especially in the eyes of a lot of people, the biggest thing. Now, I've already essentially spoken on this when I was going over the prior article that I was speaking about with the Solana, potential Solana, XRP, and maybe even other made in America altcoin strategic reserves. Really not much more to say about this. So going on to the fourth one here, lower interest rates. In August, Trump promised to cut interest rates if elected. Lower interest rates incentivizes investors to tap riskier assets like equities and crypto. The Fed sets interest rates independently from the White House, so it's unclear whether Trump will have the power to force the central bank to slash rates. Obviously now, this is going to be good for Bitcoin if it happens. Again, definitely more important than something like the whole Ross Ulbricht situation. I would put it secondary to the national strategic reserve, but nonetheless, this is important. And if he doesn't manage to fulfill this promise or this proposal, this one to me isn't really that big of a one. I would say that the National Reserve is the biggest one. Here, moving to the fifth one, I believe. Kill Operation Choke Point 2.0. During the July Bitcoin conference, Trump promised to create a Bitcoin and Crypto Presidential Advisory Council. Their task will be to design transparent regulatory guidance for the benefit of the entire industry, and they will get it done in 100 days. The first 100 days being a very, very important and relatively small window of time for the newly sworn in president to, get executive orders done, make certain proposals to get a really head start on a lot of the things that they had been promising, proposing, and making claims to during their campaign trail leading into that said election and their subsequent swearing in during the inauguration. He also went on to say, we will have regulations, but from now on the rules will be written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry. Really great sentiment to be pushing there. He also pledged to immediately shut down Operation Choke Point 2.0, which was a term popularized by crypto talking heads. It refers to the Biden administration's alleged attempt to pressure banks into severing ties with crypto clients. Now, this is a very important one, I would say. Generally, just with him getting as much done as he possibly can within those first 100 days, but secondarily here with the whole idea of this Operation Choke Point 2.0 relative to the prior Biden administration, as it said, pressuring banks to sever ties with crypto clients. Now, this could be brought into relation with a lot of the, information, news, whatever you want to call it, anecdotal evidences and sources such as on X, when it seems to have dissipated, if not completely disappeared at this point. But for those, few weeks where there was a lot of people and there was a lot of talk on X or other social medias about the Coinbase debacle, and a lot of people were getting debanked with Coinbase, and their access to their funds on Coinbase are being locked. A lot of it seemed not legitimate, but some things I did seem legitimate. I saw some things about the fact that people were just moving small amounts of money off Coinbase to an exterior source, making a lot of money there, then moving them back onto Coinbase, and that was flagging the system in some form or fashion to, this just basically to say this looks odd. This person moved a small amount of money off, now it's back and it's a bunch of money. There might be a problem here, especially if they start trying to cash out or do certain things through the medium that is Coinbase, and that would then obviously have to fall on them in some form or fashion, with the idea that if they went through nefarious means to make this money after they moved it off of Coinbase the first time, they again might create a problem for Coinbase. But in general, I would say this is a very important one of these 8 as well, especially for Trump and his broader administration with Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, the whole Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, in sense of the regulations, the rules, as the article says, being written by pro-crypto advocates, pro-Bitcoin advocates, also creating a more conducive environment and ecosystem when it comes to cryptocurrency, Bitcoin blockchain solutions, the DeFi sector, and the traditional fiat-based bank sector being able to coexist in a, as I said, a friendly, a conducive, and an uplifting and bettering manner. We move down here to this. So this is going to be the 6th one here. Protect self-custody. During the same Bitcoin conference speech, Trump also promised to always defend the right to self-custody. The idea is that by holding their private keys, Bitcoin holders can mitigate some of the risks associated with entrusting their funds with third parties such as exchanges and custodians. I think this is also important as well. I don't really think that this is as important as obviously the National Reserve and other, broader, more important regulatory concerns, but Obviously, Trump promising to always defend the right to self-custody himself, and then also having that translate into, regulations and other laws and rules, guidelines that are set during his administration that are friendly to the right to self-custody. The whole idea of being able to hold your private keys and not have them centralized to a centralized exchange such as Coinbase, um, or even, if it would actually be wild if any government action went as far as to outlaw, which, I mean, obviously that would be a reality in some sort of absolutely dystopian, dictatorial, tyrannical like government where they outlaw the ability in the first place for a citizen to even own in a offline cold storage hardware wallet in the first place. Here, the seventh one is going to be U.S. mined Bitcoin. Trump said following a June meeting with Bitcoin miners, we want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. Here it says, while industry reps said that the proposal gave hope to billiard industry, others wondered how Trump could feasibly make that a reality. Which power grids are going to support that? Who is going to pay for the subsidies to lure these miners in the first place? Alex DeVries, data scientist at I believe that's Netherlands in a more respective of the actual language. At D Netherlands Bank and longtime critic of Bitcoin mining told Yale News in June it would cost a lot of taxpayer money to make this happen. I would say this is, again, I would kind of agree. This is a relatively the realisticness of this proposal that Trump said we want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA is, I would say that's essentially possible. I would say that hearing this, whenever he said this in June, or whenever the first thing was he said this, that if anyone hearing this should have realized that this isn't a promise. He's more so kind of just conveying a sentiment that, obviously in an ideal scenario and in an ideal reality, with this whole pushing of the of America being the crypto capital of the world, obviously, all the remaining Bitcoin being mined in America would, fulfill that vision to an ideal, perfect criteria, which clearly we don't live in a perfect reality, perfect world by any means. So obviously that's not really feasible, which I would agree with what the people they quoted here said. Also bringing up the idea of power grids to support this, who's going to pay for the subsidies, so on and so forth. Although, I mean, hey, if this ends up coming to fruition and for somehow miraculously the rest of the Bitcoin that is to be mined ends up being mined in America, then I suppose that's a good thing. Maybe not actually, because I suppose that would kind of centralize Bitcoin to a certain degree, which is antithetical to what it stands for as a decentralized blockchain solution. Lastly here, the eighth point, no digital dollar. In January 2024, Trump joined a slew of Republican lawmakers and crypto pundits in rejecting the idea of a U.S. central bank digital currency. This will be a dangerous threat to freedom, and I will stop it from coming to America, Trump said. Such a currency would give the federal government absolute control over your money. They could take your money and you wouldn't even know it was gone. I'm going to assume that most of you watching this video are already, at least to a superficial, surface level degree, aware of the whole idea of digital dollar, the CBDCs, whether it's in America or in other nations or countries, and how unbelievably bad it is. It's even worse than the US dollar and fiat currency with respect to this context and the implications of a centralized currency in general. But when it would come to a centralized banking digital currency, i.e. a CBDC, this would be, spell utter disaster and financial economical tyranny. I mean, as it said, they could take your money and you wouldn't even know it was gone. I mean, especially if you're using a CBDC, if you're making posts on X or you're on social media, or if you're the government in any form or fashion, let's say they're spying on you through your phones and you're listening to you through the mics on your phones, whatever reason, even if it sounds conspiratorial, and they're aware of something that you've said or you've done that goes against the government in whatever form or fashion, then they could just turn your ability off whatsoever. They could take your money. They could not allow you to even spend your money. For example, with the whole idea of climate change and context associated with the World Economic Forum and carbon emissions. I mean, if you're emitting too much carbon this week, then you're not allowed to buy this at the store. Yeah, there's a whole slew of reasons why the digital dollar, the CBDC, is an absolutely terrible idea. So these are all the 8 promises that at least this article went over. Obviously, as I said, some of those being very important. Just to highlight the very important ones here, the no digital dollar would be very important, I believe. As I said, the U.S. mined Bitcoin is not really that big of a deal. I also wouldn't say it's a promise. Protect self-custody, big deal. The hit for him to keep that sentiment and to put into place regulations, laws, guidelines that support that. The Operation Choke Point 2.0 would also say the context of that, as I went over, would be very important. Interest rates, important, but not that important. As it said, unclear whether Trump would have the power to even force the central bank to slash rates. I mean, it would be a good thing if this happens, although it may not be that feasible. And so he may not be able to follow through this promise. The National Reserve, as I said, more likely than not, especially in the eyes of a lot of people, this is definitely the biggest one. And I think this one is borderline like 100% going to happen at this point. If it doesn't, then that's going to be it's going to be very bad, basically. I mean, if this one doesn't even happen, I mean, why should any of the other ones happen? I mean, and one of the ones that this one didn't mention, which hasn't really particularly been explicitly confirmed, but the whole idea of made in America cryptocurrencies not being liable to capital gains tax, which I personally hope that one, if anything goes through, I hope it is that one. I hope that for whatever, if it's even possible or feasible, that that's one of the executive orders that he signs in the first day or within the first 100 days. Firing Gary Gensler, that's important. He's already quit, so it doesn't really matter. And then lastly, the freeing Russell Bricht. I never, like I said, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, but I never really looked too much into this. I know generally about it. I'm not really sure if he's really a good person. Obviously, like as it said, some people see him as a crypto pioneer. Some people see him as a criminal blood on his hands. I don't really care what happens here, basically. But nonetheless, to move here into the charts. Within the last few hours or so, we've seen Bitcoin. This is a minute chart. Had a dip down. So if we look here sometime around then the 19th, Bitcoin was sitting here at around 106,000. Had a sharp decline down to around 99.5. And then with the V-shaped recovery, moved all the way up here, really ramping up the volatility here. Just a number of hours into the 20th. Actually, not even a number of hours, not too long ago. Obviously, this is when this happened. I don't know what I'm saying. Obviously, there was this massive spike in price here from around $103 all the way up to a new all-time high, approximately $109.4 thousand. Here we can see that potentially Bitcoin on the minute chart here now. Obviously, this is the minute chart, so take anything I say about this chart with a grain of salt because it's such a low time frame and very sporadic. But potentially, maybe we're seeing a symmetrical triangle, a pennant flag, bull flag of some degree here on the minute chart. Now, by the time I'm done with this video, I might come back to this and see if it looks as if it's breaking out, especially if it's going back above around 109.5 thousand. But this is very interesting, especially because, I mean, it is Inauguration Day. We're just roughly 6 to 7 hours away from the beginning of that, which is going to take place at noon Eastern time in America. Now, to go to the 12-hour here, looking at a chart that I've been going over for the last 2 videos, we can see here that all that minute time frame price action being squeezed and compactified into this one candle here, which, zooming in, as you can see, small bodied candle, massive wicks towards the upside and the downside, which is actually, I mean, it looks like just a more intense version of the last candle. The last candle was bearish and the current candle is bullish. Now, I think this is really just the current candle and the prior candle on this 12-hour chart is really as candlesticks on a technical chart for an asset. That asset being Bitcoin is conveying the very sentiment that the fundamental landscape is conveying, with the inauguration being just a number of hours away. Obviously, there's a lot of suspense, there's a lot of anticipation, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of promise that has been built. Obviously, Trump has been, there's been an attempt on assassinating him and killing him multiple times in the last number of months. I mean, that potential threat is there. From news sources that I gather information from, there, but the FBI and other agencies were looking for radioactive material in DC, other bomb-like materials, even up to the degree of like nuclear like attacks. I mean, some of the stuff I've been seeing, which coming from sources that I trust, is just wild. Which I don't necessarily find that out of the out of the realm of reasonability, given that clearly there seems to be some entity or some group or whatever you want to call it that is not a fan of Trump and does not want him to be on the scene, especially as president, even more so for a second time, taking the presidential seat away from the prior administration, and the behind the scenes figures that are associated with that, which I won't get too much into. But nonetheless, really the main point that I want to point out here is we're seeing these candles here that are, I mean, high volatility towards the upside, high volatility towards the downside. It's like, it's just spiking up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like, which way is it going to go? We're leading into the inauguration. We're leading into the swearing in of a president who's the most pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto friendly president and administration in the history of America, arguably. I don't even say it's arguably in the history of the world. But again, just I mean, I don't see how the charts could be conveying something that is further from the sentiment and the fundamental landscape right now. I think it's definitely a potential scenario that what we see here is we get close to the inauguration, there's a brief, rapid spike to the downside, then it quickly recovers. I think it's also possible that we just see Bitcoin completely, rip up to Pluto and go out of this world leading into the inauguration and after the inauguration, especially if over the next day, a few days, a lot of executive orders associated with crypto, the Bitcoin National Reserve, so on and so forth, all that I've talked about, everything I'm sure a lot of you are aware about, actually ends up coming to fruition. If we look here at this 12-hour chart, using the traditional candlesticks rather than the Heikin-Ashis that were shown on the prior 12-hour chart, we can see that there is a, as this chart was showing these kind of, indecisive or really just ambiguous candles with, does it want to show volatility towards the upside or does it want to show volatility towards the downside? We can see here that the traditional candlesticks on the 12-hour chart right now, currently, there's an hour left in this 12-hour candle, is going to, at this point, it's going to close as a bullish engulfing candle. Now, as I pointed out in the last video, this has happened many times going back to around December 20th. We can see there was one here. There's one here on the 30th, 31st of December. There's one here around the 9th, 10th of January, and there was one here around the 13th, 14th of January. So been many of these, all these in the lows though, whereas this is in the highs. Now again, I mean, as I said on the last chart, I could see quick move to the downside, then it recovers, or I could just completely rip towards the upside. Maybe, because I mean, anything's possible at this point, especially if Trump doesn't follow through with a lot of these promises he's made. And other things relative, that we see Bitcoin even, come down and just, continue to go lower, go down below, at this point, the low of 89.2. Maybe it pushes 85K, maybe it pushes 80K, maybe it pushes down to 75, 70K, maybe even 60,000 being the bottom of the barrel. If it goes below 60,000, then I basically am going to start speaking about the fact that the bear market is beginning and the bull market's over. I don't think that's what's most likely. I don't really think it's too likely at all anyways, but nonetheless, it's a possibility. If we look down here at the RSI, we can see that there was a descending resistance going all the way back to November 11th of last year. Recently, it was broken. As you can see, the RSI came above and has come down, recently tested it as it set the local low that you would have seen clearly on that minute chart that I was going over. Right now, it's finding a bounce with the recent price action towards the upside. The MACD is also further solidifying a break above its resistances. You can see here it's moved above the 0 point, which is good to see as well, to continue carrying on bullish momentum and price action towards the upside. We look here at this daily chart, looking here at the RSI. The daily RSI has also recently been broken. The MACD also is looking very good as well, with a minor exaggerated bullish divergence. The 0 point being broken. Now it's going to be very important for the MACD to get above this green trend line here, which, as you can see, going back to the prior consolidation here for Bitcoin, that was around 8 to 9 months long. The MACD down here was getting continually suppressed underneath this green line right here until it finally broke it. So that's going to be very important. And right now the MACD sits right on top of that. Same sentiment would be applied here for these yellow horizontal lines, these dotted lines here on the RSI as well, needing the RSI to get above that to really solidify a more volatile and strong breakout above the 108 to 109, rounding it up to $110,000 at this point for Bitcoin. Now zooming here on the price, again, really, we can see here that this ascending support is coming into play once more again. We look here at the this pink resistance here from December 25th to January 5th. This has been broken. So far with this recent move towards the upside, Bitcoin is continuing to show strength and wanting to continue to go higher, not go back below it. But again, it could go below it, as I've already pointed out to some degree on those 12-hour charts. It's going to be important for Bitcoin to get above this here as well, as I mentioned. I believe I mentioned this in the last video, where obviously, as you can see here, this Bitcoin moved up to around 90, 91, 92K, moved above here, just continued to find support, broke below it, and now it just needs really to get above that, which at this point is, depending upon what happens, but it's essentially coinciding with around 108 to around 110, 111, 112K at this point. So that's going to be important to see Bitcoin get above and solidify support above and continued movement towards the upside. Lastly, looking here at this weekly chart with the new weekly candle opening up. The current candle, as you can see here, looking quite nice. Obviously factoring in that movement that I was going over in the 12-hour and the daily, with new all-time highs being set in. I think that it is quite uncannily, in a good way that is, similar to, again, which I've been pointing this out for months, similar to mainly right here during the second impulse of the current bull market here during, ironically, January to February 2024. And lo and behold, just a year later, January, February 2025, actually even down almost the exact day, because you could see Bitcoin right here was setting its low and beginning its move towards the upside from around the 20th to the 20th of January 2024 to the beginning of February 2024. And it seems that we're doing essentially basically the same thing. Right now it seems to be a little bit ahead of schedule in comparison to January, February 2024, but essentially doing the same thing. Again, it's also comparable to 2023. We can see here, January, February, this midpoint, then the second leg here for this impulse, where essentially we're seeing, as I've been pointing out, a kind of ABCD-like movement with each of these impulses here, having a first leg, a retracement, second leg. What we could potentially be seeing here from Bitcoin here is the first leg retracement, and we're going to see a second leg move up anywhere to, again, broadly, just approximately $200,000 to $300,000, culminating somewhere, I think, within a range of March, April, May, June, maybe July, August, September at latest, pushing it. Now, I mean, there's also a lot of people that I think are credible that are pointing towards more of a Q4 later 2025 top, something like closer to like October, November, December. But more so, as I said, I'm leaning more towards March, April, May, June, July, because I mean it also factors in, as I've been going over again for months, where each of these impulses here for the Bitcoin bull markets here back in 2023 culminated within a 3-month range of March, April, May. We look at 2024, we saw the same thing here, March, April, May. So will we see the same thing again, somewhere around, let's just say 230K, because that's kind of specifically where I've been pointing to. So somewhere, roughly kind of within this bubble, this black little blob here. Now it's also comparative to the fact that during the prior, so really what we're seeing here being phase 1 of cycle 3 for Bitcoin, where we saw the bear market and accumulation period here, the first bull run of the current overall bull market of phase one. We saw this correction, this bear market here, and now we're seeing the second leg of the the second leg of the, wow, I just completely screwed that up. We're seeing the second leg here of this current bull run of the overall bull market. Now, really what I was trying to point out here was the first bull run of the bull market here coinciding, not coinciding, but topping out also within the March, April, May of 2021. And then is it really just a coincidence that we're seeing, as I already pointed out, March, April, May here for this local top, March, April, May here for this local top. So from 2023 to 2024. So I mean, could the same thing just happen again? Because it's been happening ever since 2024. It's 4 years in the making. 4 years being a very important time period for Bitcoin and for cryptocurrency in general. As I pointed out, will we see again this top here somewhere around March, April, May, somewhere around approximately $230,000. I mean, really, as I've been saying this for many months at this point, I think it's quite likely. I think there's a lot of evidence to back it up as well, leading into it. But really, that was all that I wanted to talk about in this video. As I said, I wanted to go back to this minute chart just within the time span of this window, look at this potential bull flag, symmetrical triangle pennant that I was pointing out. Now, at this point, it doesn't really look like so. You can see that it looks to be perhaps breaking towards the downside. Now, what we could be seeing here is it's trading within this range. Excuse me. Trading with this range breaking below. It's going to basically give us a fake out here. Maybe then it trades back up and continues to go higher. But I mean, again, like I said, this is the minute chart. Take anything I say about this minute chart with a grain of salt. But as I said, that was all that I wanted to go over and talk about in this video. As for the updates, as always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, but all that being said and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Now won't I see you forever, such a long